What if the thing you fear most is something that hasn't even happened yet? We spend hours, even days, worrying about the future. But have you ever noticed most of those fears exist only inside our minds? Even Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at that time, felt the same anxiety you feel right now. But he found something powerful, a stoic antidote, a remedy that doesn't require motivation or luck. It only requires a shift in perspective. Imagine this. Maybe your anxiety isn't coming from the future, but from your imagination. And if that's true, it means you actually have the power to master it. Marcus wrote, "The future is not yours to control. Only the present belongs to you." And when he accepted that, the fear began to disappear, not because the problems were gone, but because he became stronger than them. Now it's your turn. Let me show you how. Part 1, Story Rome. Year 167 AD. In a lonely military tent near the Danube River sits the most powerful man in the world, Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, defender of the empire. But tonight, he is not a ruler, not a warrior, not a symbol of strength. Tonight, he is simply a human being who is afraid. Outside this tent, war consumes the land. Barbarian tribes breach the borders. Cities crumble. Disease spreads across the empire like wildfire. Every citizen, every soldier looks to Marcus for answers. But inside this tent, there is only silence. One candle, one chair, one emperor, and thousands of thoughts. He reads reports from the battlefield casualties, shortages, desperate letters from generals pleading for reinforcements. Decisions must be made. Lives depend on him. And for the first time, Marcus feels something unexpected. Overwhelmed, not by war, not by enemies, but by the future. What if I fail? What if I make the wrong decision? What if Rome falls because of me? In that moment, title, power, and status mean nothing, because anxiety does not care who you are. It only asks one question: what if he knew how to command armies, but he did not know how to command his own thoughts? That night he opened his journal, the journal we now call Meditations, and he wrote, "My mind is sometimes my greatest enemy. It imagines worse than reality." He could not sleep. He could not rest, because every choice carried weight. History was watching. This was not courage. This was not stoicism. This was the breaking point. The moment when a man who seemed invincible finally felt fragile. But then slowly something changed. His writing shifted. These were no longer questions driven by fear. They were realizations. Marcus noticed something profound. It wasn't tomorrow that frightened him. It was the idea of tomorrow inside his mind. The problem was not the future. The problem was imagination. And in that realization lies the beginning of Stoic wisdom. That night, Marcus wrote one single sentence that would survive nearly 2,000 years. A sentence that still speaks to us today. Do not let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Take the present moment and divide it. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't a battle plan. It was clarity. And sometimes clarity is stronger than courage. Marcus could not control tomorrow, but he could control this moment. One breath, one choice, one action at a time. And that was enough to begin, enough to stand up, enough to keep going, enough to change history. Because Marcus Aurelius discovered something powerful. We do not fear reality, we fear the stories we tell ourselves about reality. And that realization led to a breakthrough, not just for him, but for generations that followed. Marcus didn't escape anxiety. He studied it, he listened to it, and he transformed it. Not through strength, but through understanding. And that understanding led to something deeper, something we will explore next. It is known as the Stoic Antidote, a way to disarm fear without running from it. In the next part, you'll learn how Marcus Aurelius turned anxiety into clarity and how you can do the same. Part 2. The Stoic Antidote. Marcus Aurelius did not discover wisdom in triumph. He found it when he was most vulnerable, during quiet hours of uncertainty, when he realized that anxiety was not something outside of him. It was something created within him. He did not fear enemies with swords. He feared the ones made of thought. And very quietly, almost without anyone noticing, he reached an understanding that would change the way he lived. Anxiety is not created by life. It is created by our thoughts about life. Seneca expressed it with perfect clarity. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. This is not simply a philosophical phrase. It is a diagnosis of the human condition. Think about the last time you felt anxious. Did something actually go wrong? Or were you imagining something that might go wrong? That is how the mind works. It takes possibility and paints it as certainty. It writes a story inside your head long before reality has arrived. Modern neuroscience confirms this ancient insight. When we imagine a negative outcome, the brain releases cortisol and adrenaline, the same hormones released during real danger. Researchers at Stanford University found that the amygdala, the fear center of the brain, activates even when danger is only imagined. The brain cannot fully distinguish between real threat and imagined threat. That means anxiety is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of a survival system misfiring, a system meant to protect us but often used against us. Marcus did not have brain scans or psychological studies, but he saw the truth through his own experience. And he wrote in his journal, the book we now call Meditations, "The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately." This line was not meant to be poetic. It was meant to be practical. It carried a message. Stop trying to predict the future. Stop living inside imagined disasters. Return to the present, because the present is the only place where action exists. He realized that anxiety appears when the mind loses contact with the present moment, when it reaches into the future and tries to hold on to something that does not belong to it. As he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." To Marcus, anxiety was not purely emotional. It was a technical issue, a misplacement of attention. Epictetus offered a correction when he said, "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish. Instead, wish for them to happen as they do happen, and your life will flow well." In other words, anxiety is intensified by resistance. When we try to control the uncontrollable, we create our own suffering. The Stoics believe peace came from selective control, act only where action is possible, and accept everything else as it comes. But Marcus needed more than philosophy. He needed something reliable, something that could function in chaos, a practical tool, a mental method. And that led to one of the most important lines he ever wrote. "Do not let your imagination be crushed by life as a whole. Take the present moment and divide it." This was not poetry. This was a strategy. It later became known as the division method. Its meaning is simple and profound. If a fear or a problem is too large to solve in one moment, it is not meant to be solved right now. Marcus began to understand that the mind breaks when it tries to carry the full weight of the future. But if we carry only what belongs to this moment, we do not break. We endure. He began using a question that would become central to Stoic practice. What can be done now, not tomorrow? Not when things are perfect. Not when I feel ready. Right now. If action is possible, he would act. If no action was possible, he refused to suffer unnecessarily. He would let it go, not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't belong to this moment. He began sorting his thoughts into two categories: what belongs to me and what does not, what I can influence and what I cannot. And he chose to focus only on the first category. That was how he maintained inner clarity while guiding an empire. Not by predicting the future, but by refusing to live inside it. He discovered the Stoic Antidote. Do not try to control what does not belong to you. Do not worry about what is outside your influence. Focus only on what can be done right now. This may sound simple, but most people live the opposite way. They wake up every day and check imaginary problems before checking reality. They argue with what might happen before they experience what is actually happening. They worry about the future before they feel the present. Marcus wrote, "It is not events that disturb us, but the judgments we make about them." The moment we question our judgments, anxiety begins to dissolve. Because anxiety is not created by events. It is created by interpretation. But how do we apply this? How do we make Stoicism practical, not just interesting, but usable? That was the question Marcus asked himself, and it led him to create something extraordinary, a nightly ritual, a discipline he could rely on, a tool he used especially when fear appeared. It was more than writing. It was mental architecture, a way to build clarity from confusion. Before sleep, Marcus would ask himself three questions. 1, what is under my control? 2, what is not under my control? 3, what action can I take right now? If something could be done, He wrote the next step. If nothing could be done, he practiced letting go immediately. He did not wait for courage. He did not wait for certainty. He acted when he could, released when he could not. Modern psychology calls this cognitive offloading. When thoughts are written down, the brain stops needing to carry them. That is why journaling reduces anxiety. It removes the burden of unspoken thoughts. Marcus used this long before science explained it. He was not journaling for creativity. He was journaling for survival. He concluded that anxiety cannot survive clarity. It cannot survive deliberate action. It cannot survive presence. Anxiety feeds on vagueness, but action is specific. Anxiety lives in time, but peace lives in now. So how do we practice this, not as theory, but as habit? Marcus believed that the mind must be trained like a warrior. Thoughts must be sharpened like blades, and worries must be examined and divided before they can harm us. He realized that anxiety begins when thoughts are left unchallenged, so he challenged them. He wrote, "Ask yourself, does this help me or does it hurt me?" That question became his compass. If a thought did not help, it was not allowed to stay. Psychologists today agree. Anxiety is fed by avoidance. The more we delay confronting fear, the larger it grows. But if we meet it directly and examine it, fear often shrinks. Action becomes possible, and clarity returns. Marcus discovered that courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the ability to act in spite of fear. He did not wait for confidence. He trusted discipline more than emotion. He trusted logic more than imagination. And slowly something remarkable happened. Fear no longer controlled him. It became a teacher, a signal, a prompt to return to the present moment. He understood that life would always be uncertain, but he no longer needed certainty to live. He only needed clarity. And clarity, he learned, was available every single day through a method, a practice, a ritual. He called it training the mind. He believed we should never ask what will happen tomorrow. Instead, we should ask, how will I meet tomorrow when it arrives? Because the future is not meant to be controlled, it is meant to be faced. And so Marcus Aurelius came to a realization. Anxiety is not the enemy. Anxiety is the invitation to return to the present. We do not escape fear. We learn how to stand in it without drowning. The future will always be uncertain, but our judgment of it does not have to be. That is why his writings survived. Not because he ruled an empire, but because he ruled his own thoughts. And now we are left with a question. How do we apply this to our own lives? Not someday, not when things get easier, but tonight, before sleep, with honesty, with structure, with clarity. That is the path of the Stoic. Not to run from fear, but to walk toward it with a trained mind. And to begin that training, we do not start with the future. We start with the next moment. Part 3 will teach you the nightly ritual Marcus used to navigate anxiety with precision and strength. A 2-minute practice tested 2,000 years ago and now confirmed by modern psychology and neuroscience. If you use it tonight, your relationship with fear may change. Not because the world will change, but because you will. Part 3, the Marcus Method. Marcus Aurelius understood that courage does not appear when we ask for it. It appears when we act, even when fear is present. He believed that anxiety grows in silence, but weakens when examined with clarity. He did not escape fear, he studied it. And from that study, he built a method, a nightly practice, that not only helped him manage anxiety, but reshaped his relationship with it. This was not therapy, it was not positive thinking, it was discipline. A way to return the mind to reality when imagination tried to overtake it. He did not try to erase his emotions, he tried to understand them, because he believed that clarity was stronger than courage. Once the mind is clear, courage becomes possible. Every night before sleep, Marcus sat alone often, with only a candle for light, and opened his journal. This journal was not a diary of emotions or dreams. It was a training ground, a place where he met his own mind honestly. The world expected him to manage an empire, but first he needed to manage himself. He would ask himself 3 questions, simple questions. But these questions formed the basis of what we now call the Marcus Methadone, of the most practical Stoic techniques for transforming anxiety into clarity. The first question was this: what exactly am I afraid of? Anxiety becomes powerful when it is vague. When we do not know what we fear, our mind begins to fear everything. Marcus believed that naming a fear was the first act of resistance against it. Modern neuroscience agrees. Research at UCLA discovered that labeling a fear can reduce activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, by nearly 40%. The mind calms when the unknown becomes known. When we name a thought, we reduce its ability to control us. Marcus discovered this 2,000 years ago. The second question he asked was even more important. Is this within my control? He used this question like a sword. It cut through panic and exposed truth. If the answer was yes, he wrote one meaningful action he could take, not tomorrow, not someday, but now. If the answer was no, he let the thought go. Not because it didn't matter, but because it did not belong to him. Why suffer twice, once in imagination and once in reality? Marcus refused to carry a burden he could not influence. This mindset was revolutionary. Many people wait for confidence before they take action. Marcus reversed it. Action first, confidence second. Do what must be done, he wrote, and let the outcome be what it will be. He did not wait for courage to begin. He began, and courage followed. The third question brought meaning to his struggle. What lesson is this trying to teach me? Marcus believed that problems were not always barriers. They could be instructors, a mirror held up to the mind. The impediment to action advances action, he wrote. What stands in the way becomes the way. Modern psychologists call this cognitive reframing, the ability to reinterpret challenges as opportunities. To Marcus, this was not mental trickery, it was wisdom. A teacher cannot arrive unless a student is ready to learn, and the mind cannot grow if it runs from discomfort. Let's practice together. Think of something that has caused you stress, something unfinished, something that feels heavy. Now pause, take a breath, ask yourself, what exactly am I afraid of? Is this within my control? If yes, what can I do now? If no, can I release it gently until action is possible? And finally, what might this be trying to teach me? Say it softly, I do not need to fix everything. I only need to act on what is mine. Let that settle. Anxiety shrinks in the presence of clarity, not because the world becomes easier, but because the mind becomes stronger. Marcus believed that emotions were signals, not commands. Just because the mind sends fear does not mean we must obey it. Instead of resisting emotion, he studied it. He asked himself, does this feeling help me or hurt me? If a feeling helped him act with integrity, it was welcomed. If it weakened his clarity, it was questioned. That simple question became his compass. This approach made him resilient. But resilience does not come from thoughts alone. It comes from practice. Marcus believed that the mind must be trained daily, especially after failure. He wrote, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. And he was. Discipline became kindness. Structure became freedom. And every night, regardless of the day's challenges, he returned to his journal. That consistency was powerful, not because it solved everything, but because it refused to surrender. He understood something that psychology now confirms. Anxiety grows when thoughts are left unchallenged. But when we face them with structure, fear becomes manageable. This is why his method works, not because it suppresses emotion, but because it reorganizes them. Instead of being ruled by imagination, we become guided by clarity. Now we go deeper. After asking his three questions, Marcus added another step on that modern neuroscience calls action orientation. The idea is simple movement interrupts anxiety. When the mind is engaged in motion, it cannot spiral and worry. The brain rewards action with dopamine, the chemical of motivation and momentum. That is why small actions often feel better than large plans. So Marcus asked himself one more question: what small step can I take next? The key word is small. Anxiety feeds on grand expectations, but a single step taken honestly can silence fear more effectively than hours of overthinking. Marcus believed that courage does not begin with strength. It begins with direction. When there is direction, the body follows. Try it now. Think of something you have avoided, a conversation, a decision, a task. Do not plan the entire solution. Ask only, what can I do in the next 5 minutes to move this forward? That is all. If an answer appears, hold on to it. That is not just an idea. That is your next step. If no answer comes, that is fine. Let the question rest in your mind. Sometimes clarity needs time. The brain calms when it knows a step will be taken. It does not always need a full map. It only needs to know that movement is possible. This practice builds what Marcus called the inner citadella fortress within the mind. Not a wall that rejects fear, but a place where fear can arrive without overpowering us. Strength is not found in pretending to be unafraid. Strength is found in standing with fear, in choosing clarity anyway. Now let's assemble the full Marcus method exactly as he practiced it. Tonight before sleep, take 2 minutes. You don't need a special place. A scrap of paper is enough. A quiet corner is enough. Or even the space where you already sit. Step 1, write down what worries you. Step 2, ask, is this within my control? Step 3, if yes, write one action. If no, release it. Step 4, ask, what lesson is this offering me? Step 5, write one sentence of courage or acceptance. It might sound like this: I cannot control everything, but I can take one step, or I am not the future. I am this moment, or maybe simply, tonight I choose clarity over imagination. This practice is not the end of anxiety, but it is the end of confusion. It does not deny fear. It reorganizes it. It teaches the mind to act when possible and rest when necessary. And through repetition, night after night, something powerful happens. We stop fearing our thoughts. We begin guiding them. This is how Marcus Aurelius ruled his mind even when war surrounded him. Not through hope, but through structure. Not through perfection, but through honesty. One breath at a time, one moment at a time, one step at a time. That is the Marcus method, not a promise of peace, but a path to clarity. Not a cure for anxiety, but a way to walk with it and use it to grow stronger than before. And now we arrive at the closing chapter, because everything Marcus learned comes down to one final message. A message not about empire, but about life itself. The conclusion he left to us. The reason his words survived for 2,000 years. It is time for part 4, the final message, and a call to action that goes far beyond this video. Part 4, the final message. Marcus Aurelius lived at the edge of uncertainty. War, disease, political pressure, responsibility for millions of lives. And yet he wrote something astonishing. Today I escaped anxiety, or no, I discarded it, because it was within me in my own judgment. These words still exist after 2,000 years. For one reason, they are true. He did not wait for the world to change. He changed his relationship with it. He did not need certainty to find peace. He only needed clarity. And clarity begins here in the present moment. The future is not your enemy. The future is your reflection, a mirror that responds to how you live today. You do not need to predict it. You do not need to control it. You only need to prepare for it by mastering now. As Marcus wrote, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts, and thoughts like muscles can be trained. So let us ask the Stoic questions, not as theory, but as a compass. What is within my control? What is outside my control? What step can I take now? And what lesson is hidden inside this challenge? Your mind may resist these questions. That is natural. Fear wants you to believe that everything must be solved at once. But the remedy is simple. Do not think in years. Think in moments. Do not lift the future. Lift what is here. Today, only today. Take one step, any step. Acts of courage do not need to be loud. Sometimes courage means choosing to breathe. Sometimes it means writing one sentence. Sometimes it means saying, I am not ready, but I will begin anyway. That is strength. That is stoicism. That is how empires are guided and how ordinary lives are transformed. You might ask, will I ever be free from anxiety? But Marcus Aurelius would answer, do not ask for the anxiety to disappear. Ask to understand its message. Because anxiety is not always chaos. Sometimes it is the voice that says something needs your attention. Something needs action. Something is asking you to grow. In this way, anxiety becomes a doorway, a signal, a teacher, and perhaps even a gift. Because only when we face uncertainty do we discover our inner strength. Only when we feel small do we seek something deeper. And only when we stop running do we see clearly. Remember this, you do not need to be fearless. You only need to be focused. You do not need to know everything. You only need to know your next step. You do not need to fix your whole life. You only need to ask, what can I do now? This is the Stoic way, not to escape the future, but to meet it with prepared hands, not to silence fear, but to understand it. As Marcus wrote, the art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, which means life will challenge you. It will push back, it will test your strength, but it will also reveal your power if you meet it with clarity. So tonight before you sleep, try the Marcus method. Only 2 minutes. Ask the 3 questions. Write the 1 step and speak 1 sentence of courage even if you whisper it. I release what I cannot control. I act on what I can, and I trust myself to face tomorrow. Because the future is not ready to be lived. It is waiting for you to shape it with attention, with presence, with courage. If this message spoke to you, do not let it stay silent. Let it move. Let it breathe. Share it with someone you care about. Comment with the words, I choose the present. And if you wish to walk this path, further subscribe. For more Stoic wisdom, for timeless guidance, for the strength that builds quietly day by day. In the end, the question is simple. Will you let fear write your future, or will you choose to meet the future with clarity 1 step at a time? The choice is now. If this Stoic lesson helped you today, write in the comments 1 single word, present. Because the future is unknown, but the present is yours to master. Like this video if it brought you clarity. Subscribe to Making Life Better for weekly Stoic wisdom and practical life strategies. And share this with someone who deserves a moment of peace tonight. Your future begins with the decision you make now.